Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
I have a question. Who wants to go first? To win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
Support also provided by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and the Bill and Shirley Fox Fund for Leadership and Public Affairs Programming at Detroit Public TV.
Hi there, I'm Christy McDonald. We are at Macomb Community College in Warren this week with Nolan Finley from the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson from WDET Radio. Guys, doesn't this make you want to go back to college again?
Never. Nope. Never.
Being on campus, carrying your backpack.
To get out of
Wait
college.
a minute, it took you 13 years to get out of college?
13 years to get out of college. I would never go back.
Should we go back and take a look at the transcripts, Nolan, of how you actually escaped out of there with 13 years?
You're welcome to.
That's right.
One undergrad degree?
You're welcome to.
Is that diploma stamped, or you just grab it and
the
run?
curriculum changed over twice while I was there.
So you're not quite sure what degree you have actually on the way out. You know, it's just part of an effort to get out and about in different areas of the metro area just to see what people are all doing. And we have a lot for you coming up, including taking a look at the issue of housing instability in Macomb County, including here in Warren, which has one of the highest rates of court-ordered evictions in the country. Then we're going to take a look at new housing in Islandview in Detroit that's trying to answer concerns around gentrification. But we're going to start with some politics and the gubernatorial debate this week.
Michigan's jobs governor. We need to cut taxes in Michigan like President Trump has cut taxes across America, because tax cuts mean more jobs.
We're going to fix the damn roads, and we're going to make sure every child in this state has a great education that leads them on the path to a high-wage skill.
Democrat Gretchen Whitmer and Republican Bill Schuette will face off this week in the first of two gubernatorial debates before the election.
I have plans. I want to make this the Michigan that our kids stay in and make their lives in, that our families can thrive in.
We're not going backwards. We can't afford a sequel of the failed governorship of Jennifer Granholm. We're going forward. We're going from good to great. We're going to win again.
The two have traded jabs in ads and online about tax breaks, health care, roads, and Larry Nassar's prosecution.
Sexual assault charges.
The latest poll from the Detroit News and WDIV shows Whitmer leads Schuette by 12 points, 47 to 35%, with 13% undecided.
These are investments.
All right, so I'm really looking forward to this debate on Friday night. It's going to be on the west side of the state in Grand Rapids, one of two debates. So, Noah, I'm going to start with you. What are the three things that you think you'd like to see coming out of this first meeting between the two?
Well, so far this has been an issueless campaign. It's been all about the individuals, the personalities. They really haven't drilled down and distinguished themselves on the issues. There's been a lot of plans out there floated around, very shallow. I think they've got to, their challenge is to show a command of the issues and, you know, so show some understanding of what it's going to take to keep Michigan on this forward movement track, and then also to address some of the intractable problems the governor hasn't, Governor Snyder didn't manage to solve in his 8 years, namely roads and education.
What about you? What are you looking for?
I think that it's the same thing. I think the challenge is different for each of them. Gretchen Whitmer's up so much already without having dived that deeply into some of the issues that, you know, she's playing a little defense now, right? Not trying to make a misstep, not giving people a reason to dislike her or vote against her. Schuette's got to make a real case to voters that I think they feel like he hasn't made for some reason. He is still way behind in the polls.
Three things that I'm thinking about. One is that you touched on roads, specifics, because they're both talking about fixing roads. Of course, Gretchen Whitmer, that's what she's hung a lot of her campaign on. But where specifically are you going to get that funding? And I think people want to hear about that. Number two, talking about Medicaid expansion in healthy Michigan. There's been a lot going back and forth on each campaign accusing the other about what's going to happen there. Third thing I'm looking for, tone. I think in the last 2 weeks in this country, a lot has been placed on tone. And if you're ready for office and coming out of the Kavanaugh hearings, it's going to be interesting to see what part tone is going to play in this debate on both of their parts.
Sure, and some realism as well. I mean, as I think Steve was about to say, on roads, they've got plans and they've got ideas to pay for them, but will they work? I mean, they're not really practical plans, and I think some practicality, some realism, something beyond on education, beyond they both have offered up specific little, literacy czars and this sort of thing, but in terms of the broad, big, bold plan that's going to move us out of 45th, 46th, 47th place, that's missing.
Are you going to confront the structural weirdness with education, with the separate governor and board of ed? On roads, I really wonder if both of them are taking kind of a pass on that because they're counting on the marijuana proposal to pass, and that the tax revenue from that is going to bail out whoever is the next governor in terms of having to get as much money for roads.
But gosh, what are the numbers on that right now on the marijuana proposal?
It's inched over 50%. Yeah. But the way the darn thing is written, we will reap in Michigan less money.
We'll get less in other states. But it's still hundreds of millions of dollars.
It's about 250 million. Yeah. It's still far short of the $2 billion we need every year.
How much stock do you think that they're putting in polls right now? I know that each campaign talks about their own internal polling, which shows that it might be closer. Schuette's campaign is saying that. How much stock do you put in it right now or a month away?
I mean, the problem with polling, and this is not a problem with pollsters or the people who commission polls, it is a problem with the electorate, is that, you're only getting a snapshot, and you're getting a snapshot of now, today, whenever they took that poll. And the volatility that exists among the electorate is the thing that throws it off. That's what we saw in 2016 as Hillary Clinton's lead eroded all the way up to the day of the election. And something like that could happen here, and you wouldn't know until the last minute exactly what people are going to do.
There's so much volatility in the country too. I mean, you look at the President Trump's approval ratings goes up and goes down week by week. I think if they're looking at polls, they're making a big mistake, because as Steve said, at this point in 2016, this is what the polls look like then, and you saw what happened. And I think they need to run campaigns, aggressive campaigns. If you're playing defense at this point, you're making a mistake.
Like you're behind.
That's what Hillary Clinton did here. And it cost her the election.
One thing that I want to make sure that we talk about in the next couple of weeks is the 8th Congressional District and the race there. Just this past week, Alyssa Slotkin and Mike Bishop kind of had a debate discussion on Flashpoint with Devin Scillian, who's a friend of the show. I don't mind saying, hey, go watch that debate and go ahead and take a look at it. It was very, very good. But it's interesting how much money is being put in that race as well. So we've got to talk about that sometime soon.
A lot of outside money coming in.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we're turning now to Warren, and the fact that Warren has one of the highest rates of court-ordered evictions in the country. It's part of a bigger conversation around housing insecurity, not only here in Warren, but in Southeast Michigan. And Stephen, you actually led an interesting discussion here in Warren over the summer as part of WDET's book club. What was the book, and kind of what was the situation?
Yeah, well, we decided to read as a community together Evicted by Matthew Desmond, which is a really riveting book about how evictions drive poverty in the city of Milwaukee. He spent a couple of years basically living with families who bounce around all the time because they keep getting put out of their homes. We thought that was a really great foundation to have a conversation about housing insecurity here in Southeast Michigan. Evictions, foreclosures, tax foreclosures, senior housing. Think of all the issues that we have here with making sure people have a home. And so we had meetings in several different places, had a lot of folks turn out. The one here in Warren, we did talk specifically about those court-ordered evictions, which is a particular dynamic here, and we're going to have more on that issue this fall.
Let's go ahead and take a look at what people had to say.
Warren's changing. Warren's changing a lot. It's a very different community than it was when I was a kid growing up in Detroit. And I would imagine that there are a lot of issues that have come up in the last 10, 15 years that may be new to Warren.
It's an economic situation. When I graduated from high school 45 years ago, I could have walked out of that door of high school, got a job in a manufacturing plant. that I could have lived in any neighborhood I wanted to. The United States now is less than 13% unionized employees. We have archaic labor laws where an employee trying to organize on a job generally gets fired. Employers pay below the minimum wage or minimum wage. You can't sustain a livelihood or a living in a house when you're making $8, $9 an hour.
I'll add a little note that about minimum wage. The Alice report from the United Way, which we talk about on the show sometimes, suggests that life is pretty much unlivable in Southeast Michigan with anything less than $20 an hour.
Yeah.
And that you are living check to check, paycheck to paycheck in a really tough way with anything less than $20 an hour.
And think of how many jobs you can name that don't pay people
Nearly
$20
that
an hour.
much.
$20 an
Most
hour
jobs.
is a lot, actually, if you're talking about unskilled labor.
Yes, I'm a landlord.
That was what I was just going to ask.
It's almost always about non-payment of rent. I don't know any landlord that likes to be between customers. Oh, let me also say, it's very expensive to be poor.
That's a great way.
Most everything costs more, from car insurance, car payments, food. But just as important, now we have a bunch of people from our municipality here, and I'd like to point out a couple things. By Michigan statute,
Go ahead.
the taxes are twice as high for a rental property as they are for a homeowner.
For a homeowner.
So right away, you're going to have more just by Michigan state statutes.
And because the property taxes are higher, that means the rent has to be higher.
Well, it affects the rent. So there's a lot of costs that are really high and going higher for insurance, for taxes, for a lot of things, just to own the property.
Right.
So poor people are going to pay more, period.
A lot of commonalities are that each of the persons, even that are described in the book, have not only the very severe housing insecurities, but along with that, they are not getting good medical treatment, mental health treatment, or substance abuse treatment. And those things just dovetail in. And if they did not have mental health, physical health, or substance abuse treatments before they were evicted, they come shortly after being evicted or within a very short period of time.
One of the big things that really needs to happen is just people starting to talk about it and bringing it to light that this is not because people are lazy, this is not because landlords are slumlords. There's a whole bunch of different things going on in here, and I think you need to look at each individual issue and see, where did that come from and how can we help to try to stem this off a little bit.
What really struck me is when you heard from the landlord who sat and said, look, it's very expensive to be poor, and that he feels that there are so many different policies in place that their hands are tied as well.
Yeah. We heard from a lot of landlords during this book club. At each event, there were landlords who showed up to talk about their side of the story and to sort of complicate that picture of the ogre-like slumlord who's just putting people out because they can't pay. They have a side of the story too, and often they go to extremes to try to keep people in their homes, even though they can't pay or can't pay the full rent. Really, this is a reflection of poverty is the problem. People live paycheck to paycheck. They just barely get what they need each month to be able to pay all their bills, and they fall behind or something happens, and they're often out of luck.
No.
And these municipalities do think they can bleed a landlord. Taxes are way higher on a rental property, and the community say, well, that's taking it out of the landlord's pocket. No, the landlord's passing that on, and so rents go up. Insurance is higher. There are a lot of additional costs. If rental homes were taxed at the rate of regular homes, rents would come down, and particularly at that lower level, that lower housing level.
And you look at the systemic kind of ripple effect of when someone then is evicted from their home, and then what they are able to do or what they're not able to do from there. It affects so many other aspects.
Yeah, well, we just saw the report in Bridge magazine and Chalkbeat about mobility in Detroit schools.
Which is a great read.
Half of that problem is driven by people losing their homes and having to move across the city. If you think of the other issues that you see in cities like Detroit, especially with poverty, a lot of them are driven by this housing insecurity that people have. Instability in where you live causes instability elsewhere.
And now there's a housing shortage as well. So if you're a landlord, during the recession years, if you're a landlord and your house came open, you rode with your tenant for several months because you knew that if he or she left, you might not get somebody else in. Now there's such a demand for housing, such a shortage of housing, particularly at the lower cost levels.
Right.
Somebody moves, somebody stops paying the rent, you've got to work with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, you've got to get them out of there because there's somebody else knocking in at the
Who
door
wants
who
the
wants
house.
in.
Which I also think is another offshoot that we need to look at is the stress and trauma it puts on kids. And so that's another part of the issue when you're talking about education and can kids achieve, and sometimes that they're so far behind even getting to school because of the stress and trauma that they have undergone in that kind of change of housing and of living. We're going to continue to talk about this one, but we're going to turn now to a different look at housing in Detroit. One Macomb County developer is starting to buy and renovate in the Islandview neighborhood. And the concern that longtime residents could face higher rents or be pushed out by new development is very real there. But what's happening at 4 units along Grand Boulevard could be a small-scale solution. Will Glover has the story.
Sterling Heights, Macomb County, where home builder Joe Ventimiglia shows off his latest plans.
This is the elevation of the fourplex as we feel we're going to execute it.
He has been building high-end designer homes in the suburbs, but now he's focusing on Detroit's Islandview neighborhood.
Now, was that okay, guys?
I'll never build in the suburbs again. I'm 100% down to Detroit.
Ventimiglia and his partner Michael Coffendaffer found this rehab opportunity on Grand Boulevard, close to the bridge to Belle Isle. 4 units in a row, 3 of them unoccupied.
You can't see, but behind this sheetrock, I suggested that we build in like a low-slung bookcase.
The building was built originally in 1912. It was an absolutely spectacular architecture. The whole neighborhood loves the fact that it's not being torn down and it's being brought back.
The price tag? $300,000 a unit. The rising cost of housing in this low-income area has community leaders at the Church of the Messiah talking.
Actually, Islandview is one of those key strategic areas in the city for investment.
Assistant Pastor Wally Gilbert has a nearby friend hit by a rent increase.
So actually he's going to go from paying $600 and something with everything included to a year later paying almost $15. This just happened.
Those investors who are betting that, the neighborhood is going to become the next, midtown, they're charging much higher rents than what this area had been known for.
Janine Hatcher of Genesis Hope watches the changes in Islandview, including The Platform, a developer working on a couple of projects here. One will turn an old nursing home into retail and 40 to 50 housing units, half of them affordably priced thanks to subsidies. Construction is expected to start next spring. Hatcher wonders if there will be enough affordable housing to go around.
I think that this area will once again be a thriving community. I'm just not sure if folks who currently live here will still be here.
Lorraine Griffin is the lone occupant in the fourplex Joe Ventimiglia is renovating. She's been here 48 years. Her mother worked 3 jobs to buy it.
Oh, back then it was nice. It was nice. We had neighbors. Mama passed 3 years ago. She was 91. I don't see us going anywhere else. This is home.
It's been 14 years since anyone lived in the other units. Now, they're all hot properties.
I seen a car parked in front of the house, and then this guy jumps out. I said, oh no, here's another white guy trying to buy my house.
But Ventimiglia wanted Griffin to stay. He's giving her a new roof, new windows, and cement work. No strings, no charge.
He wasn't joking. He said, this is what I want to do. Do you agree with this? I said, yes, I do. And he went full forward.
A lot of society calls the rebirth of a neighborhood gentrification, where people that can't afford to live there are basically pushed out. And my feeling is we created an opportunity of reverse gentrification.
Ventimiglia has hired and trained locals to finish these units and more properties he's acquired. People from Islandview, some who just happened by.
I rolled past on my bike and I asked Joe for a job. And he said, when can you start? I said, as soon as I get back.
It's been easy for Mark Williams to get work painting on construction sites, but hard to find a real job opportunity.
It happens all the time, but not like this. You get a day or two, not a job. So this is a lot different. And it's connected up with some education. You know, it's to specialize. When I leave here, I will specialize in something besides painting. I sure will.
I get more experience over here, working with professionals, trying to better myself, just learning more.
You don't only get to know these guys, you get to know everybody in the neighborhood. The restaurants, I mean, it's you come down here, you actually feel like you're part of the community.
You know, this is something that you can do all over the city. Instead of just sitting and waiting on somebody to let their property go or sell it, you know. Build around them, help build them up, you know, it helps everybody.
Griffin's unit, valued at $10,000, is about to be worth 30 times more. In time, she'll pass it on to her granddaughter. Ventimiglia thinks he's found a new model for development, the reverse gentrification, he calls it, where homeowners in attached properties can stay put if developers are willing to give up some of their bottom line.
It's a perfect example of how people should be allowed to stay within the community. We just have to find a creative way to accomplish it.
A couple things that really stand out for me. One of the things is that Joe was able to get that property from the land bank because he was working with the community and Lorraine next door and hiring people and saying, look, I want to be in the community and I want to help out in that way, which is a huge deal.
Yeah, well, and the land bank has been pretty good about that. They have this neighborhood partnership program where they make sure that they are giving these properties that they have to people who are invested in the neighborhood in other ways than just financial.
Training people in the neighborhood to also work on these projects. Joe was also telling us that the security around the projects, he doesn't have to worry about break-ins on a construction site because he's got people in the neighborhood who are invested in the area and that are working on it.
And you know, it's key. The skills these guys are picking up, they can take back to their neighborhoods, other neighborhoods, and be entrepreneurs. They can make a living as tradespeople without worrying about whether somebody hires them here or hires them there. With that skill, they'll always have work. The thing I worry about for Lorraine is she's going to be able to afford her new tax bill.
Yeah, and that's definitely a consideration once you have that kind of property value.
She may qualify for the poverty exemption for taxes, but that's hard to get. It's hard to renew and keep up with. So.
Well, and can you duplicate this at a larger scale in other neighborhoods? This is just one pocket. We're going to continue to follow what they're doing there in Islandview. Well, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to Macomb Community College for having us. And we're going to leave you saying goodbye to a colleague and friend, Chris Felsen from WRCJ Radio. He connected with audiences for years, sharing classical music with wit and insight. Here's a tribute to Chris, and we'll see you next time on One Detroit.
Good morning. Welcome to the Well-Tempered Wireless. I'm Chris Felsen, and it's my honor to present to you this morning.
Since 2005, Chris Felsen was the midday classical music host on WRCJ 90.9 FM. He was one of the best interviewers in the business.
Conducting opera from the pit when you've got a live performance going on stage is a whole different can of worms, isn't it?
For more than 30 years, Chris was the host of the Sunday morning classical and jazz music program, The Listening Room, first on WDET-FM and later on WRCJ.
This is the dream job I waited 35 years to get.
Chris Felsen was a true radio talent. He saw the microphone as an essential instrument of personal communication, and he had a special ability to connect with listeners.
Radio is a much more personal medium. It's a one-on-one medium. You're not talking to a large audience, you're talking to one person.
Creative, innovative, always prepared, Chris was passionate about public radio and Detroit's musical community. He truly will be missed.
To spend time with a music that I love and a medium that I love is it's a dream job.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
I have a question. Who wants to go first? To win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
Support also provided by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and the Bill and Shirley Fox Fund for Leadership and Public Affairs Programming at Detroit Public TV.